Siri underneath. And the Red Sox are shut out. And for the first time this year, they're held to one hit.
Yeah, the Sox pitched well in this series, but the offense just did not show up. 33 strikeouts in the series. The main hitters at the top of this lineup did hardly anything in this series. And you're just not going to win many ball games, especially against a team that can throw the ball as well as the Tampa Bay Rays. So, tough one, tough series, and what are you going to do? Keep going.
2 hours, 7 minutes. There's a look at the so-called race. 4 back, 9 to play. And the Red Sox lose here tonight by a final score of 2-0.
All right, Boston. Might as well leapfrog from one suck team to another. Spend most of the afternoon talking about the Patriots on Felger and Maz. We'll jump to the Red Sox now. Losers last night in Tampa Bay. They dropped 2 out of 3 to the Rays. Now again, a game under 500 again. Might be 2 under. Are they 1 under or 2 under? I think it's 1. One game under. So losing record again for the Red Sox. They are now, incredibly, 3 games out of last place in the American League East.
Closer to last place than the playoffs. Still
just 4 behind the Twins, whom they will play this weekend at Fenway Park. That's the voice of Matt McCarthy here. Tyler Milliken here as well. It is a Roundtable Friday on the Baseball Hour. Let me just get this part out of the way. This could have been a good weekend. It really could have. Red Sox could have been, let's say, 2 out, 2 behind the Twins, 3 games head-to-head. Like, that could have been fun. That could have been a good weekend. Instead, they're behind the Mariners, Tigers, and Twins, and the Red Sox really are relegated to the roles of spoilers in this series against Minnesota. They can still hurt the Twins, but they would also need Detroit and Seattle to lose simultaneously in order to get back in this race. Those 2 teams aren't playing each other, are they? I can't imagine that they are. So anyway, I'm not going to spend time on that part of it. The real thing could be that the Red Sox still have a shot at last place, which you should not rule out. And again, the falling under 500, there is some sort of stain that comes with that. It's a stigma for finishing with a losing record versus a winning record. Alex Cora knows it as well as anybody because he said this just a couple of days ago, Jimmy Stewart. Cora said what?
Just under 500 for the first time in over 3 months. How much does that just kind of hurt?
It sucks, we got 3 ways: be average, below average, or above average, right? And right now we're below average, right? And like I've been saying all along, it's not lack of effort, right? It's just it's not happening for us right now. Today, like I said, 0-2, we got burnt, like damage on 0-2 pitches with 2 strikes. We didn't execute. It was just a bad one tonight.
It had been a bad one for a while. Bad series. 33 strikeouts in the 3 games.
You had 10 hits in one series. 10 hits. 1 in this last game, I believe.
So think about that. They were 3 times more likely to strike out than get a hit.
Yeah, that's right.
And if you look at the month of September, the Red Sox are tied for number 1 in all of baseball in strikeouts with the Oakland A's.
Well, they're in the top 5 in the majors anyway, right?
Top 3 all season long.
Okay, so they've been striking out like crazy, and they've had series like that. Certainly, we can get into some of that. Let me just ask you guys this question. We'll get into Shohei Ohtani tonight. I do have a question about the Red Sox pitching program that relates to something that happened in Tampa Bay. We'll get to that as well. We'll certainly take all of your calls, 617-779-0985. But let me ask you guys a couple of questions. One, just to start, and it really just triggers something else. Keep your answers short, Milliken.
Yes, sir.
Oh, boy.
Okay. The Red Sox, in theory, should be at a spot now where you look at them and say, if you are an optimist, you could look at them and say, well, Tanner Houck is a step in the right direction. Slayton is a step in the right direction. Whitlock should be in the bullpen next year. They have some kids coming up from AAA, presumably at some time next year.
Second half Bayo.
Okay, all of that. Bayo's pitched better. Yep. So there is some reason to look at them and say, maybe now they are ready to take the next step. Now, the pessimist, like me, would say, I've been saying this for 5 years or 3 years. So let me ask you this question. The idea of the Red Sox taking the step that they will commit starting now to being a playoff team, that they will go into the free agent market and the trade market, and they will be more aggressive than they've been, that the payroll will go back to a level that we are accustomed to as Red Sox followers, and in the case of our listeners, fans, what is your level of confidence that they will invest this offseason?
It's low. How could it be anything but low? I heard full throttle last year, Maz, and nothing happened. And we're sitting here at the end of another season saying, if you're a little bit more aggressive in the offseason and you're a little bit more interested in trying to build a winner, maybe we'd be talking about a team that's going to the playoffs instead of missing the playoffs again. For what, the fifth time in the last 6 years this team's going to miss the playoffs? So, no, how can you have any confidence? And that's the frustrating thing is they have the pieces. As you said, Maz, they have the pieces. They've got 1 million guys coming up from the minor leagues. They've got 1 million left-handed hitters, most of whom are worth something. You could go out and actually add to this team. You could spend. You could trade some of your prospects, trade some of your lefties. Like, I could build a team. You could build a team. Any of us could build a team that is capable of making the playoffs and is committed to the idea of winning. They just stop short. They stop short. Why would I believe? I will believe it when I see it. I'm done being duped.
Okay, so Tyler, the reason I asked this question is because Jared Carabas, for one, says that he still thinks, that they basically said this past spring that they will commit again when they feel like they are ready to compete and contend. Do you think they're there? Do you think they're ready to do that this offseason?
Yeah, I do think you're going to see them at least give more effort than they did the last couple years, where we know a line was drawn well below in the luxury tax, whether you want to go back to 2023 at this point, which was $225. It was actually below that going into this season before they worked out some of these extensions for Bayo and Rafaela or whatever it may be. But I think where you look at and where the Red Sox are right now, Craig Breslow recently, in that Ken Rosenthal article, I think there were two things that really stood out to me in a major way. It's the fact that we're already hearing the rumors of a big trade coming along. We have not got that in recent years where there's been the real, and I like Tristan Casas as much as anyone, but that tells you they're ready to make some kind of deal, even if the feelers are starting to go out there and they're starting to push it. I also go beyond to Craig Breslow's recent comments talking about the state of the team, kind of his outlook, which was a little weird that he did it before the Red Sox were eliminated, which was basically him saying, here's my outlook on what this season was, but he said the state of the build is strong. You go back to what the language and the wordage really was coming in, to that deadline, right after season ticket renewals had kind of come and gone, where he said it was really about the big three and where they were at. We need to see those guys continue to take a step forward. Pitching, young players on the big league roster. I think for the most part, you saw that outside of, Tristan Casas losing a year due to injuries. So if you feel like the build is strong, if you go beyond that and you have all this money coming off the books, you're at $153 million. So you just do the math. That's $88 million before the first luxury tax. You should be able to supplement this team along with maybe a healthy year from Trevor Story, improving a defense that's been one of the worst in baseball, a healthy year from Tristan Casas,
okay,
or
so
whatever comes out
Tyler,
of that.
Here we go again. So this is sort of what I'm saying. It's if this.
It's a lot of ifs.
Yeah,
it is.
It's if this, if that. So I tend to lean on McCarthy. I tend to or lean to McCarthy's side of it.
It's just you saw how close it was.
Let me ask you this, because again, and I'm not criticizing you for being more optimistic. I'm not criticizing Matt for being more pessimistic. You believe what you believe, as do most fans. How do you think most fans feel? Do you think most fans have confidence? Yes or no?
No, they shouldn't.
Matt,
No, come on.
how could they? And this is a problem. So this is the real damage that the Red Sox ownership and management has done to its brand. Now, you want to tell me that when Werner said full throttle, were the Red Sox prepared to spend for some guys last offseason? I think they were.
We know Jordan Montgomery now. We got the recent report that the Red Sox were willing to go 4 years, but he thought you guys were losers. He didn't think you were real contenders.
He's not wrong.
Which is the same feeling fans are having right now. It's bleeded out into the players in that pool.
Okay, so this is another thing I worry about. And I said this last year, just because you want to spend doesn't mean you'll be able to. Last year, I thought there were going to be a lot of these other teams on the market that have a lot of money to throw around. New York, the Dodgers, the Yankees, go right down the list. There were a lot of teams that had dough. This year, I don't think that's true because a lot of them spent their money last year. I also think the Red Sox have prospects to deal, which should put them in favorable positions for trades, although that market probably will be more competitive because those teams that did spend last year are going to be less likely to do it again and now maybe more likely to go make a trade.
What you have the ability, though, is you can offer basically anything outside of pitching. I know pitching is the one thing everyone wants to hit, but if you can offer, hey, a power-hitting first baseman that was one of the better hitters in the second half of a season, you want Marcelo Meyer, one of the top shortstop prospects, or outfielders that did it at the big league level, we can offer you really any of those three. Say Connor Wong, even a guy who's been, offensively above average this season. You can offer a lot of stuff that most teams can't.
But as McCarthy said, not having pitching to send back is a big negative.
Massive. Not everybody's Heim Bloom where you trade Mookie Betts and you don't get a pitcher in return, right? I mean, you generally need, historically, and Maz, you can speak to this just about better than anybody, you generally need a pitcher to send in a trade. Red Sox trade for Pedro Martinez, they send two guys, Pavano and Armas. Pitchers.
Yeah, more often than not, the team that is sending you an established major league starter is going to want some sort of lottery ticket.
That won't be the Mariners, though, which is where I think you sit there that they're so desperate for bats. That's why that team matches up. They have so many starting pitchers, they're begging to get rid of one at this point because they need those bats. That's where you match up, and hopefully you can make a deal with, Logan Gilbert, George Kirby, Brian Wu, Bryce Miller, pick your poison, Luis Castillo, if they want to get an older guy off the books.
Okay, so and look, and that's true. I mean, there probably is going to be a team out there that you fit with. So, but the real question to me is, will they do it? No. Are they willing to do it?
No.
You don't think they'll make that trade, McCarthy?
They better, but I can't believe until I see it.
So
I'm broken at this point.
Just hold and I think a lot of fans are. This is part of the problem the Red Sox now have with their fan base. They've lost trust. The fans don't trust him anymore. They don't have the confidence of the fan base, and they shouldn't, because they've been sub-mediocre now for a while. 6 last place finishes in 12 years. 7 if this one plummets. So that does damage. I'm sorry. That does damage, and fans should be rightfully pissed off, which brings me to this. The Bruins went to camp this week, and we don't cross sports generally, but just bear with me. The Bruins went to camp this week, and they just signed Elias Lindholm and Zadorov, the defenseman, to big contracts. Now, they're negotiating with Jeremy Swayman. It feels like that's going to go on for a while. It's a hard cap league. You can pick Swayman's side, you can pick the team side, whatever. The Bruins have generally been a cap team, but they've not bottomed out. They've not gotten bad to rebuild. They've been a playoff team, a competitive team. A couple of years ago, they were a cup favorite going into the playoffs, all while having a system that is sketchy at best. The Patriots now feel like they are rebuilding from the bottom and going from the top to the top of the draft. The Bruins are built from the middle, or maybe even above the middle, and tried to do it at the same time. I'm curious as to what fans think the Red Sox are doing. Do you think they're building from the middle? Do you think they're building from the bottom? Because they haven't really bottomed out. Even though they finished last in the division, they won 78 games. So they're not. The only time they ended up with a top 5 pick was Marcelo Meyer, and that was the COVID year. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's the highest they've ever picked in the draft. In the same breath, they haven't spent the same way that they've spent on the market historically, and so they've stopped short of trying to be more like the Bruins, and they're not quite as bad as the Patriots. I'm just wondering what fans would prefer if the Red Sox picked one or the other, because I know what I would pick. 617-779-0985. I see a lot of you lined up already, so I promise we'll get to your phone calls when we get back. We'll get to Ohtani later in the show. We'll take your phone calls. And, I want to ask about the Red Sox pitching program. Because, again, something should have hit you in the face if you watched any part of that game last night. And we'll tell you what it was when we come back on the Baseball Hour.
Runs are in. Low coming around. Everybody in. 8-3 Tampa Bay. O'Neill laying out in left field, trying to make a spectacular play. He came up empty, and the inning blows up here for Tampa Bay. Everybody scores.
Winkowski trying to go in with the sinker here. It gets enough of the plate where Siri could get a bat on this ball. Winkowski trying to work that in off the plate. And then T.O. trying to make the superhero play here. You don't blame him. You're trying to make a play. Feel like you're trying to save your season on every play right here. And he lays out. I love the effort. Just couldn't get there. Just feel like a lot of bad things happen in left field at Tropicana when the season's on the line.
You can have Tyler O'Neill. I said this to you last week. I said it. You can have him. Not my kind of player. Now, again.
What if he just DHs for you, Matt?
Okay, so again, but where's he going to hit in the lineup? If he's your DH and he's hitting fourth, my answer is no. If he's your DH and you're hitting him seventh, fine. Like, I'm less concerned about, I'm just telling you he's not a centerpiece guy.
You want another right-handed bat that's more dependable, maybe more consistent.
Bingo.
Yes, one that doesn't strike out 33% of the time. And yeah, he'll go out and he'll hit you 30 bombs, but he's a flawed baseball player. And he doesn't, in the end, he doesn't really help you win baseball games. Like those 30 home runs this year from O'Neill or whatever he has now, kind of empty, right?
Yeah, and the other thing is he misses a lot of games. And that's another thing. The more I hear about him in terms of like why he's missing games, he doesn't exactly feel like the kind of guy to me that's going to fight through every little thing to be on the field.
He did have 2 injuries this year. As much as I do think the injury history is something you should talk about, especially if you're talking multiple years in a contract. The leg infection thing that happened, freak. Rafael Devers running into him in left field, and him getting concussed, pretty freakish. This isn't typically the same, knee and like hamstring problems he's had, and those did pop up at times. My question more would be, would you go after and get like Teoscar Hernandez, who the Red Sox seemingly liked a lot, has had a monster year with the Dodgers, and can kind of serve that purpose while also being effective against righties, not just lefties?
Can you find an everyday right-handed outfielder instead of doing the Renfroe,
Bingo.
O'Neill, just like let's rotate through? These guys are available, and they're always going to be available, but you know why? Because they're flawed baseball players. That's why they're available. That's why you got O'Neill for a song, Renfroe for a song, you name it.
You can go get me a real player is right.
You can do it in different ways, too, whether it's Alex Bregman or Willie Adames, or you want to go to first base, you flip Casas, go get Pete Alonso or Christian Walker.
Yeah, there's plenty of ways to get it.
No. We're going to do it with Vaughn Grisham.
Yeah,
that's who we're going to do it with. Yeah.
Big leagues, Vaughn Grisham.
Like, I don't even care what position he plays, but I want a real player is what I want. Let's take a few calls. We got a bunch of people lined up. Buddy Dean in Shrewsbury. Dean, go ahead on Ohtani.
Ohtani might have had the best offensive game of all time last night. 6 for 6, 3 home runs, 2 doubles, 17 total bases, 2 stolen bases, and it was just an absolutely electric performance. I was upset I was watching the dumb Patriots instead of that.
Dean, let me ask you a question quickly. If last night was just was exactly what you said, and did not also count as the game in which you became the first 50-50 player in baseball history, do you think we'd be talking about it?
Oh, yeah.
I don't. And I'm going to let you go. Dean, I'm not cutting you short. Thank you. You call all the time. I like having you on the show. I just got other people on. I don't. So, again, it might have been the single greatest one-game performance of all time. I don't know. Maybe we wouldn't be talking about it if it wasn't 50-50 and if it wasn't Ohtani. So, has Ohtani ever had a 3-homer game before? Was last night his first 3-homer game?
Need to look that up. I don't know.
So, and I'll also say 3-homer game. The last one was off a position player, is Vidal Brujan.
Yeah, like 3 home runs, 10 RBI. No offense, it's a great night. I've seen it.
Right, Nomar did it, May 10th, 1999, and that's what I actually thought last night. I'm like, this is like the Nomar game. Turns out it's actually statistically even better than that.
And Garcia Parra had 2 grand slams in that game. Okay, so like it was, I mean, with all due respect to Ohtani's single game, the single game thing, like. Any jackass can have a great night. He can. Mark Whitten, as Jimmy pointed out, hit 4 home runs in a game. Give me the guy that goes 50-50. That takes a whole season, let alone who can strike out 200 guys, hit 300. And by the way, the 50 steals, I put this on Twitter today. He's been caught 4 times.
93% success rate this year.
This is growth from a player. You go back to his most steals ever in a season, 2021. He had 26 bags. He led the MLB in caught stealing that year with 10. So this is a guy who's improved that facet of his game.
He has 35 stolen bases since July 1st. He basically woke up on July 1st and was kind of like, yeah, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to do this thing. What a freak. Like, when you really think about it, it's an unbelievable accomplishment. Even though the stolen base is a little bit easier to get in baseball now, like, for him to do that, to wake up on July 1st, steal 35 bags, only get caught 4 times this year, to go with 50 home runs, there's no player in any sport on planet Earth like Shohei Ohtani. He can wake up and decide, I'm going to be one of the best on planet Earth at this specific thing. And that's ridiculous.
I think Japan now has a legitimate argument to make for having the greatest player in the history of the sport.
He is the greatest player in the history of the sport, Mass.
Ian in New Hampshire. Ian, go ahead.
Hey, Tony. Hey, guys. I really like where you're going with the Red Sox in general, and I'd be curious to get your take and Matt's take on this, too. So, amazing what the ownership group did in 2004, and, 2007 was glorious and the whole thing. But it's pretty clear it's like it's the Red Sox for the larger Fenway Sports Group, and I'm talking sports biz, is like a nickel-plated hood ornament on a Ferrari for them at this point. And so I think there's 2 options out of this. One is Henry decides to sell for whatever reason, or the second thing, and you guys will roll your eyes at this, but the fans just got a boycott. I mean, the ticket prices and the merch and the whole thing, like the fans got to step back and say, like, no, we're not doing this anymore. So, as a lifelong fan, I'd be curious to get like your take on that.
Yeah, so Ian, I don't think they're going to sell. I mean, you don't build the kind of conglomerate or, entity that they have built over there with the Fenway Sports Group and then sell the Red Sox. So I don't think that's going to happen. And what was this other one?
The second point was talking about fans boycotting.
Yeah. So look, I think in some ways that has already happened.
The fan takeovers you've seen. But even this summer, when you go back to mid-June and the team got hot, it started to become a lot closer. It'll never be, dominated by Red Sox fans until they're truly a competitive team year in and year out. But it got better than what we had seen, end of last year, early this season as well. People were buying in when the team got somewhat competitive again this year.
Martin in Texas. Haven't heard from you in a little while. Martin, what do you got?
Yeah, Tony, I just don't think, like you and Matt said earlier, that they have the ammo to trade for any decent pitching with, years of control because, like you said, you need to give them a decent pitching prospect or a diamond in the rough in order to acquire a decent pitcher. But instead of trading one of the outfielders or the bevy of outfielders they have, they get Yoshida, then they can just kind of maybe rotate the outfielder guys through the DH spot and just get Yoshida off the books because he's okay, but he's not a good DH.
Yeah, so the problem with getting Yoshida off the books, and I think these guys would agree with me, who's going to take him at that money?
Right.
Now, could you move him somewhere else and get, just to dump him? Sure, but
you're attaching a prospect and eating money.
Or you're going to eat half the salary or both.
I think both. I think that's what it's going to take there, and you're going to need to find a team that believes that he can play defense to some degree or at least hit lefties because right now, to you, he's a platoon bat. He's not even an everyday player.
I'm not a huge Yoshida guy. I mean, I've made that clear. We've done a lot of talk about Yoshida for the last 2 years. I would rather trade Abreu than Yoshida because you might get something back in return for Abreu. Like, I don't want to start talking about, dump this guy, dump this, dump that guy. Fine, whatever. If you're making trades this offseason, you need to get something in return. Get something that you don't have. Wilyer Abreu might be able to get you a pitcher in return, a right-handed hitter, a bullpen arm, whatever that may be. You got to give up something to get something, and they've been so opposed to that for the last 6 years. That's why I'd rather trade somebody like Abreu, because you're actually going to get something back for him compared to Yoshida, who you're just going to dump for nothing.
I think where the conversation changes a little bit though, Yoshida's a roster flexibility problem for me. And while I think he offers with K percentage, we're talking about a team in the Red Sox that's striking out top 3 in MLB. He has the lowest K rate of anyone in the starting 9 on a day-to-day basis at 14%. So you take him out and you add another guy that whiffs. It's only going to continue to get worse. And on that point of pitching, I do think there is an arm they could move. You had Luis Perales, who was a top 60 guy. Many people believe would have been top 50 by the end of the year. Yes, he's having Tommy John surgery. We've seen in the MLB draft, teams don't shy away in the first round from a guy who had TJ. If you're willing to move him when maybe his stock's a little bit lower, you have that capability there. And you also have some arms at AAA a la Hunter Dobbins, who Hunter Dobbins, nice year. He's gone up to AAA and had a nice, little start there, 3 or 4. Not the biggest arms, top 100 guys, but there has been a step in the right direction, especially in the lower minors for the Red Sox pitching wise this year.
So here's
Juan Valera is another guy who profiles right in there as well.
Here is, I'm just telling you, Tyler, they don't have guys at the upper levels.
That's where I would go with Perales. Can you get a team that likes him so much, even coming off Tommy John?
But teams are usually going to want a guy who's at AA or higher and has some track record. But look, like you said, maybe there's a match with the team that just needs hitters. That's fine too. Like whatever it is, there should be a deal to be made. And I'll just add quickly, what people like Martin miss when it comes to Yoshida is you're paying him either way. Whether you trade him or not, you're paying him. No one's going to take that contract. He's not worth it. So it's sort of like Chris Sale. Chris Sale's pitching for the Braves right now. The Red Sox are paying half his salary. The Braves aren't paying the whole thing. The Red Sox are eating the money. That's part of the reason they get a prospect back.
$17 million.
But Yoshida, in Yoshida's case, you're not going to get the same kind of prospect. And again, Grissom might suck.
He does.
Well,
he does.
The good thing with Yoshida is, if you trade him, you're not going to get the pain of Chris Sale winning a Cy Young. Doesn't matter what Yoshida is. He's never going to be that.
Yeah.
Now, I do want to get to, I said I wanted to touch on the Red Sox pitching program. Which we'll do when we'll come back.
It blows.
McCarthy will get McCarthy will get you caught up on your headlines. Don't go anywhere. We'll also do more on your. I'm sorry, I was going to say Yoshida. I meant Ohtani. We've done enough on Yoshida. Enough on Ohtani. We'll do more on Ohtani when we come back.
jumping up and down saying, I want to be a part of it because it has a chance to be a very stacked rotation in 2025.
That's a cut in the Mets academic now with the strikeout of Devers. And he gets him reaching on that slider. And a wave and miss. Again, it disappeared. Four-seamer up right there. And a strikeout. That's 4 strikeouts through the first 8 hitters. Strike 3 called on Devers to open the 4th inning. That pitch to the outside edge. Got him looking. And he gets him looking right there.
There was.
Got that pitch out there.
What a night it has been for him. 7 innings of 1-hit shutout baseball.
That was last night. There's a reason why we're playing that for you. That is Zach Littell of the Tampa Bay Rays. Zach Littell is a right-handed pitcher, 6'4", 220. At one point, I think he had 10 strikeouts in the first 5 innings. 10 out of the first 15 outs were strikeouts. Half of the Red Sox swings through basically through that stretch were swings and misses. They failed to make contact on half their swings. This guy was mowing them down last night. And the reason I bring this up, because in all honesty, you guys tell me, Zach Littell was with the Red Sox for like all of 5 minutes. And I didn't remember this. Maybe you guys did. I'm sure Milliken did because
I've been complaining about Zach Littell for like the last 12 months. It's been eating at me so much.
Okay, so again, you know every guy that comes through the door, even if he's here for 10 seconds.
Jeffrey Springs, another guy who.
Okay, just stop.
I'm sorry.
Stop. So Zach Littell was purchased by the Red Sox from the Texas Rangers in May of 2023. Okay, a week later, the Red Sox put him on waivers and Tampa Bay claimed him. When he was with the Red Sox, let's see.
He was a bum. Can we sum it up?
Yeah, I'm just trying to give you the exact numbers.
It was 2 outings.
Yeah, 2 outings. Yeah.
3 innings, 3 hits, 3 runs. He walked 3, a 9.00 ERA, and he went to Tampa. Now he's good. Okay, and you mentioned Jeffrey Springs. Same thing.
Exactly.
Jeffrey Springs was here, sucked, went to Tampa, now he's good. So let me ask you, like if I were John Henry and I wanted the Red Sox to become the Tampa Bay Rays and I wanted us to operate like a mid-market club and find guys in other organizations who couldn't pitch, bring them to our place and straighten it out, I would look at those 2 pitchers and say, why can Tampa get something out of him and we can't? Why?
His name was Dave Bush. That really is the center of it.
Okay, but he's not here anymore.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
right.
Dave
Littell
Bush
was last year.
Yeah, Zach Littell, Jeffrey Springs, Dave Bush, that was his entire era. You want to throw another guy. Ryan Brazier went to the Dodgers, took 10 days to learn a cutter, went and had a dominant season, and he's been hurt for most of this year, just like Jeffrey Springs has.
So you think it was the old pitching coach?
100%, and I'll leave it at this. Cooper Criswell this year is kind of that version of a guy who, borderline reliever, quadruple A guy. Now he's been a fine number 5 starter for you.
I know this is the type of thing, Maz, that keeps Milliken up at night, the trash into treasure type of pitcher that the Rays find, the Red Sox have. I just can't give a damn ultimately about the occasional Jeffrey Springs or Zach Littell thing. This guy has been, for the most part, a journeyman until this last year and a half with Tampa Bay, where he's been pretty good. Same for Jeffrey Springs. I would so much rather prefer the Red Sox be in the business of getting actual pitchers, real pitchers, instead of trying to turn trash into treasure, which really was the approach under Hein Bloom. Try to do the Rays thing, find a guy, who struggles somewhere else and, teach him to spin the crap out of the baseball or whatever it is and turn him into something and kind of, churn and burn through those guys. Can we go back to trying to find real pitchers? Pay for real pitchers, trade for real pitchers, instead of focusing and getting upset about the Zach Littells, because they're always going to be those guys, right? The guy sucks somewhere and he goes somewhere else. You don't want to make a habit of it. I get it. But we're obsessing too much over this team turned trash into treasure. Why can't you turn trash into treasure? Why don't you just go out and get treasure? You want to do that? You're the Boston Red Sox. Go out and get real guys, not Zach Littell.
So, Tyler, let me ask you a serious question. The fact that it's Tampa, should I read into that? In other words, and you raise a good point about Dave Bush, the old pitching coach. He's gone. Obviously, Bailey is here now. So, and maybe Bailey has done a pretty good job with Criswell. I'll grant you that. What about the market? In other words, is it easier to figure it out in Tampa than it is in Boston, where every game, relatively speaking, not that the Red Sox fan base is what it used to be, but there is, it's a bigger market. It's a bigger, there's more fans in the ballpark every night. There's more pressure to perform. Is there anything to be drawn from that?
I think so, but I think if you ask the front office, they would tell you no. They would tell you they don't worry about this external factors. They think if they get, a pitch to move a specific way, if they can get you to command it. And, specifically when it came to Zach Littell, right? He was with Andrew Bailey in San Francisco, and he was a good reliever there before he got into it with Gabe Kapler, and it all went south. But why did Zach Littell suddenly become this great pitcher? He stopped throwing the four-seamer as much. He became very heavy on the slider and the splitter in the zone. Very similar to what, we've seen Andrew Bailey do here, with the Boston Red Sox. I do think there is a balance, though. There is something to the guys that can come in a big market, perform on this kind of stage over the course of a full season. I also think it's the same reason why, Jeffrey Springs blows his elbow out. To have that durability, to be someone you can depend on 30 starts regularly, there is a certain cachet and price that comes with that.
Yeah, so again, and Matt, I generally agree with you. Those guys aren't going to win you a championship, but they can fill out your staff. Like, I would agree with that part of it. I'm not against finding pitching in other organizations. But if I'm John Henry, and obviously he already has asked the question because Dave Bush is gone. But, like, if I'm John Henry, I'm looking at it saying, wait a minute, we had the same guy and he sucked here. Then he went to Tampa and they got something out of him. Why? So, again, and I'm not telling you as a fan you should really care because, again, I think they are, they're filler on your pitching staff at the end of the day. But Henry wants more of those guys. And those are the ones I would look at and say, why can Tampa get something out of them and we can't?
And why it hurt so much during those years was the fact that you had no pitching prospects coming through. So when you had a chance at someone, Zach Littell or, Jeffrey Springs, who had team control, even if you were going to be a back-end starter, a number 5 and number 4, that was such a game changer because they were so desperate for any controllable arms that they could kind of stack on that roster to have that depth. Because as we see now, it's why they made the Quinn Priester trade. It's like, yeah, he's not technically a prospect, but he's 23 years old and done really well at AAA. Screw it. We'll throw everything at the wall and hope he becomes the next guy. Same reason they traded for Nick Pivetta in the 2020 trade deadline, and why that is one of the better moves Chaim Bloom ever made because you got 5 years of a number 5 starter for pretty cheap money.
Yeah, again, he's a big leaguer. Pivetta is. Again, you're not going to win any championships with him at the head of your rotation, but he's a big league pitcher. Giuseppe in Stoneham on Craig Breslow. Go ahead, Giuseppe.
Hey, Maz, thanks for taking my call. I've just been thinking this upcoming offseason has to be one of the biggest in the last couple of years for the Sox, and I don't know how any fan or anyone within the organization can have any confidence in Breslow to be making the right calls here. I mean, every move this guy's made has blown up in his face outside of O'Neill, who I know you guys don't even like. So there's a lot of moves to be made. I just don't know if he's the right guy.
So, Giuseppe, I don't know either, and I'll tell you this. Thank you for the call. What you just said about this being a big offseason, I've said this the last 3 years.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. That's been the conversation every time going into this winter.
So this is my point. I'm getting tired of it. I am. What am I supposed to believe now? The Red Sox want me to have faith? Why would I have faith? They've destroyed that faith. And again, if I'm people in that organization, I'm looking at Tom Werner and saying, why did you have to open your mouth? All of a sudden, everybody started expecting something. Then we ended up getting nothing, and now you make us look like a bunch of jackasses, which they probably were going to look like anyway. But really, it's you go out and say this, and then nothing happens. People are looking at you going, that's it, I'm done, I'm out. The television rating last night was in the ones.
Werner's shown his ass twice now. Go back to the defensive comments. They're 10 games better. Guess what? Yeah, if you're 5 games better right now, you're 4 games back of the third wild card. If you played proper defense this season, even average, just not the worst in baseball, not the most errors and the most unearned runs, you have a wild card spot. That's it. That's the difference. All you had to do was properly build your team defensively so that if Trevor Story didn't go down, you wouldn't completely fall on your face. You still didn't do that.
I'll believe it when I see it, not when I hear it. Frank in Boston. Frank, go.
Yeah, that's a good lead-in for me. Outside of the money, the execution has to be much better. You don't get credit for doing things like Trevor Story or Yoshida getting it wrong. Not my job to tell them what to do, but they better start getting it right. And I'm worried about that because they can't get anyone good to come here. I think Breslow's done about 15 things and been wrong on 14 of them. Chaim was no better. And then concerning the money, waiting to invest until they're ready to compete and contend is a false construct that they float out there for suckers. They're a big market team. There's no reason for them ever to be last place or under 500. The Yankees never are. There doesn't have to be a dichotomy in this notion of red light, green light, and waiting to invest until some sort of something happens. They should spend and be competitive every year, and every few years have a team that you feel is good enough to make a run.
So, look, Frank, the part I don't get is they say, well, we're not going to spend until we're ready to contend. So then what kind of message does that send to your fan base?
Or the players or anybody.
Right, let alone your players. Like, okay, you're not going to spend? Well, I'm not either. I'm not coming. So if you're a fan.
What do you think Kenley Jansen's going to be saying? This is a guy who seemingly doesn't look too happy once again, upset that they're not going to be in the playoffs. That guy's going to be out in free agency. That's a guy who came here saying, they told me in 2022 and 2023 when I signed that 2-year deal, just like they told Chris Martin, we were competing to go to the playoffs and for a championship, especially the second year of that deal in 2024. Look where we are. They never even went over the luxury tax.
See, the Red Sox don't want to believe this, but what the problem is now, they lack credibility. They have no credibility with their fans, and they have no credibility with players around the league, which, thank you for bringing up Jansen. So, but if you were anybody out there, why would you believe in them?
You don't believe in them. Period. End of story. I think there are very few people out there who believe in this organization. Maybe some of Milliken's ilk, but that's pretty much it.
Look at the last two big guys you paid. Masataka Yoshida, you showed up with so much more money, the rest of the league thought you were on drugs. Trevor Story, a guy who got caught in between right before spring training as it really was starting to get going and fell into your lap, seemingly wanted to go back to Texas more than anything where he was from. So those are the last two times a real guy you paid showed up here. When's a guy going to show up? Well, yeah, you may give him money, but he thinks this is a real place to win something. You haven't done that in years.
We'll wrap it up with your calls. We'll also get to Shohei Ohtani when we come back on the Baseball Hour. drive, deep right field. He has done it. It's the first time Ohtani in his career has had a 3-home run game. Can you believe this? 10 runs batted in for Ohtani. That's also a career high. 51 home runs for Shohei Ohtani. Who better for the as the subject of the Between the Lines baseball report brought to you by Corona and Shohei Ohtani. Corona, the official cerveza of Major League Baseball. Enjoy the finer life of sports with Corona. Must be 21 plus. Relax responsibly. Corona Extra Beer, imported by Crown Imports, Chicago, Illinois. Typically, we do what to watch out for in the weekend's games. I would say watch out for the Red Sox winning because they could stay out of last place. So I'd rather talk about Ohtani. Far more interesting. So, look, we only have a couple of minutes here, so let me do it this way. In all the time I've covered baseball, anytime the subject of the greatest player in the history of the game come up, it would be Willie Mays, Ken Griffey Jr., but Willie Mays, Mickey Mantle, and then inevitably the trump card was Babe Ruth. It's Babe Ruth. So now Babe Ruth goes back to a much longer era, but it makes sense. Power hitter, pitcher, did it all. The other guys were center fielders. Is Shohei Ohtani now the greatest player in the history of the sport?
Yeah, easily for me. I don't even have to think twice. Some people may want to get a couple more years of this prime, but when you see him start the 50-50 club, something nobody had ever done before, coming off Tommy John surgery as well, while rehabbing and still showing to be, a number 2 pitcher in a starting rotation at the same time. And, you look at Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth stole 17 bags in his best season ever. Shohei Ohtani getting up to 50 in today's game with velocity, with the game being at a higher level athleticism-wise than it's ever been. I don't know how you look at it any other way.
I don't consider myself many things, but I think I am a historian of baseball. I love the history of baseball. I had an ex-girlfriend who had to drag me out of the plaque room in Cooperstown after an hour and 45 minutes. She's like, we got to go, man. We got to go. He's the greatest player I've ever seen. I think he's the greatest player in the history of the game. Could Barry Bonds pitch and start the All-Star game?
No.
Could Ted Williams decide one day he wants to pitch and start the All-Star game? No. What Shohei Ohtani can do, which is basically waking up and deciding that he can do anything on a baseball field, forget baseball. I can't think of anybody else I've ever seen in sports. I didn't see Bo Jackson, who could play any sport and could seemingly do anything. I don't know if I've ever seen a player in any sport who can do literally everything in the game the way that this guy can. Could Tom Brady go out and play linebacker? He's the greatest football player I've ever seen. Could he go play linebacker?
No.
Could Messi play goal? Probably not. Shohei Ohtani can pitch, hit. He decided on July 1st he wanted to start stealing bases, has stolen 35 bases since then. I think it's honestly, individually, the most impressive thing I've seen in sports, period. He's the greatest baseball player of all time.
So let me just share this with you guys and with listeners, because to me the best single talent I've ever seen is Ken Griffey Jr. So I found myself now again that Griffey didn't pitch, so it's a different kind of thing. But I'll just say this quickly, that with Griffey, I always looked at the center fielders, Jimmy Stewart, as being the best athletes on the field, particularly if they could hit. So then I started to think about it, and I said, I bet you Ohtani could play center.
I'm sure he could.
Easily. We've seen him a little bit of outfield in the past where, he's athletic. He's one of the more athletic guys you'll ever see.
So he's played left and right in Anaheim, and he wasn't going to play center in Anaheim because they had Trout.
And it happened to be the years that Trout was healthy.
So I think he could do it. I think he is really the kind of guy who could probably play every position on the diamond short of catcher. And catcher, he probably could do that.
I bet he'd call a hell of a game.
Matt Wieters out there.
Yeah, I'm just telling you that, I think he'd probably play shortstop if you put him there. I wouldn't rule it out. And I think he is, I think it's a real discussion. And again, it's sort of a little bit of a shock to Americans who've always, it's our game. the best player in the history of the sport is now from Japan.
And you saw it, I think, on the biggest stage in the WBC, going back a year ago, when you saw him versus Mike Trout, what that moment meant, where Mike Trout, for my generation, he's viewed as the best baseball player for, 2012 and beyond at this point. Now Ohtani's taken that. To see those two guys go head-to-head in that moment and Ohtani obliterate him, to me, that's when that baton was fully passed.
When Ohtani came over here, they said he's the Japanese Babe Ruth. It's now time to start saying Babe Ruth is the American Shohei Ohtani.
Oh, good way to say
the bar.
It. I like it. How about that? Drop the mic, Jimmy. Drop the mic. Joe Murray's coming up next. He's got you for the rest of the night. He'll do a lot on the Patriots, obviously. McCarthy's got your headlines. Milliken's headed out the door. I'm going to be following him. Everybody have a good weekend.
WBZ-FM and HD Boston. We've got the Patriots covered.
Back to the home. He's in trouble. A sack.